Amazing job. It's hard to follow that. You're going to see that I'm going after this in a little different perspective. I'm going after on onboarding on the before and the why of onboarding. But first off, to reintroduce myself, I'm Mark Kreps. I'm the Vice President of Sales for the Agricultural Division of RDO Equipment Company. I do need to do some housekeeping first, and I'll probably get killed for this, but Keith, can you stand up? Yep, I'm an identical twin, and my twin brother is in the room. We both work for RDO. We both have worked for the same companies for the last 30 years, with the exception of 5 years. And at least once an hour, someone comes up and starts a conversation thinking there's two of us. So after lunch, everyone's drowsy in this room. I don't want anybody to wake up and all of a sudden think we're playing mind games with you, that there's another person sitting in the room. So with that. So RDO Equipment Company, we're primarily a John Deere ag and construction dealer. We're located throughout the United States. We are very well diversified, including with our international partner locations. To give you an idea of how we're set up, so because of the structure on the previous map, or the span of area on the previous map, we have 3 divisions in the United States for our ag division. Midwest, which consists of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and Montana. Northwest, which is Washington and Oregon, and Southwest, which is Arizona and California. In each of those regions, we do have an area VP. We have general managers for pods. So we have 2 or 3 stores will be a pod with a general manager who has a RSM, a regional sales manager, reporting to them, and below them would be, we call them account managers, salespeople. We also run in Moorhead, Minnesota. We have unique for our company with the ag division is we have centralized sales support. So we do have a centralized sales team, which I'm part of, we take care of all the behind the non-customer facing events within the customer's purchase, sales coordinators, deal financing, all the finance contracts, the bookings, the wholesale. We have a large internet sales team, so forth and so on. All right, before I get going on my onboarding objectives, I'm gonna ask a few questions. I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand because with these bright lights, I can't see about 3 tables back anyway, but how many people in this room, if you were given the opportunity to turn back the clock, have a salesperson working for you today that you wouldn't rehire? Again, yeah, I know there's a couple. How many of you, if you look at those salespeople, are keeping them on board, one of the factors that they're still employed with you is the deep relationship they have with the customer, or vice versa, the customer has with the salesperson. Knowing full well that there's people out there you can hire, because you've done it, that can do a better job, represent the company better, call on more people, and make more sales. But this is the one industry where there's such a bond between the salesperson and the farmer and the customer that it's basically the salesperson holds the negatives per se, and because they have the customer support. And that's why onboarding is so important. And that's why we have taken steps at RDO Equipment over the past few years to really slow down the onboarding process, to take our time, make sure we hire the right people, and make sure that we're not making a mistake that we're gonna pay for down the road. So again, another question I'd ask about those same people that we probably wouldn't hire back, that we probably, that we know that the customer's in love with, but we're not as much in love with them. How many of those people did you bring on board? You trained them, you gave them all the tools, everything Kyle brought up, you've given them everything. You gave them a guarantee for 90 days, 6 months, whatever it may be, a year, and you extended that guarantee just a bit longer because that guy's catching on. He's going to make it. He's a good guy. He's trying hard. The people like him. So keep giving him a little more rope and keep going. That happens all the time. And that's where we can blame onboarding. We can do everything we want to onboard the person with all the proper procedures. But if we didn't hire the right person in the beginning, it's not like I'm joked about back at our company because they'd always tell us all these things that the salesmen were doing wrong, but they were going to send them to Carnegie. And I always said the Carnegie's not a magician. Well, onboarding is not a magician. You need to make sure that it starts with the hiring process. It starts with the interview. You have to decide on the candidate. You have to make a plan. One thing I'll go over in great detail is you have to build your bench strength so you're not held captive to make that decision quick to hire that person. And then how fast do you drag them along? How long do you go before you cut the cord? So what we do at RDO Equipment Company, and I'll just go over this quick, I know this is an onboarding, but it's part of getting the right person to onboard, is we start with a phone interview. If it's somebody we're interested in, there's a phone interview done with an HR specialist. They take loads of notes. They forward it on to everybody that you saw in that previous org chart. So it goes all the way up to the EVP of the company that sees who the potential candidates are for the position. Once they narrow down a pool of people that they want to interview, they have personality profiles done on all the candidates. And I know in my breakout session yesterday, there are a number of dealers that do that. Just with a quick show of hands, how many people use personality profiles like Caliper or Profile XD? Great. So we do that as well. And then what we do is they'll meet with the hiring manager and possibly somebody else in the store. They may go through 2 or 3 interviews, and the final group of people that we pick, there is a panel interview. We have at least 4 people per se, could be more, in the room interviewing them. And I know there's people in this room right now saying that's overboard, you're probably gonna scare the guy away, but you truly don't know the who and the why of what you're dealing with until you put them in multiple situations. You put them under a little bit of pressure. You ask the right questions. I can give you, speaking of questions, I can give you 2 questions that would speed up the interview process because it does it for me. They're basically the only 2 that I ask. The first question, one of our parts managers asked in an interview once, and I thought it was an amazing question, and I've used it ever since, was, tell me of your major purchases you've made in the last 3 years, tell me what the most favorable purchase you made was and what the least favorable purchase you made was. And I can just cut to the nuts and bolts. If they talk about price, if their least favorable one is that they paid too much for a pickup, or their most favorable one is they got a better deal because they played a game, don't hire that guy. You're hiring the person that's all about price. You're gonna hire the person that their whole scope of things is on what's the best price, what's the lowest I can quote this thing. The other question, my mind just went blank here for a minute, sorry about that. But the other question we ask is tell us about what you know about RDO Equipment Company. And if that person tells you, well, it's owned by a farmer and you're a large company, or doesn't have a lot of information, if they haven't taken the time to kind of even look up, all of us have our core values on there on the webpage. All of us have things that we've done in the community that we're proud of. If the person doesn't take the time to look at that, to find out more about your company, how much time will they take to find out about the customers you're gonna ask them to call on very shortly down the road if you hire them? So those are just 2 quick questions that you can use to make sure that we get the right person on board to start the onboarding process. And again, I think that the more people that sit in that process, if it's a highly sought after candidate, he feels more, it feels like more of an accomplishment when he got hired because he went through quite a process to get hired, and we feel that we've made the right decision. So those of you that do personality profile tests, this is a profile that was sent in for a potential account manager for one of our regions just recently. And you can tell at a glance with his learning index and verbal skill, that's obviously something you're not looking for. You can also tell on the next slide here, if I can get it to go, energy level low, but his assertiveness, sociability, and manageability is good, which means that he's gonna look very good in the interview because he's gonna be very sociable. He's gonna be assertive a little bit to get the interview, but you're gonna make a mistake if you hire that person. So to give you an idea, I started with the company 25 years ago and they did a caliper test on me when I was hired, and we've been doing it ever since then. So one thing that we did a number of years back is we had all of our area managers and all our divisions tell us who's the best performing salesperson you have, and they got all those people's calipers or profile XTs, merged them together and came up with the ideal RDO employee, the person that we have found that in our structure can perform, and that's something that I would suggest. Oops, sorry, I got to go back a sec. So then the next step is to make a plan, your onboarding plan. It's always going to change the industry experience, whether they worked in the industry before, whether they worked at another dealer, where they're coming from. Customer familiarity, okay, how's that one? And that obviously, if they're from the area, if they know the customers, the volatility of that customer. How, have you had a number of people call on them recently? Have you, what's the situation, the relationship with the person that's leaving the company? The one that's overlooked the most is, can they close? How often do we onboard a salesperson, put a salesperson on board our company that has never closed before, that we've hired from another industry, maybe moved them from an area, farm parts, whatever it may be, and they've never closed? I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, especially with the changing economy, the way things are going. As Dr. Weber says, you just can't have I can't remember what term you called it, but the guy that's just basically closing the sales, that's just taking, an order taker. So, a perfect example of that, and I'll get into it a little bit later, is that a couple weeks ago I had a coworker of mine with their kids at our lake cabin. We tried teaching the one son how to water ski, and if you've ever done that, skis cross, it gets a little scary. We're an hour into it, and she looked at us and said, it'd be easier for him if somebody had showed him how to ski first, had demonstrated it. Think of that with the people we bring on board, how important it would be for them to follow along or travel along with other people and learn how to close. Bench strength. So one thing that can make onboarding very easy and a lot less painful is build your bench strength. So we have a AYF, we call that Access Your Future. We started that in our aftermarket department years ago, of going after young college students, tech school students, and paying for part of their schooling and getting them on board, obviously, for technicians. I'm sure all of you do that. We recently started that position a couple of years ago we thought that our precision products team would be a great place to bring on people that they can get to know the customer base. We can onboard them into the company, and they would be able to intermingle in a non-threatening way with our customers and fill in the holes that we need down the road for an account manager. Well, as that worked out, we decided that we were going to, this year, we have now started positions, and we have Access Your Future people that we are bringing on board without a position, a set of pre-decided position for them, as Access Your Future for large ag, small ag, CP, and again, precision. We have a role that we get creative when it has to come up with the title, but one thing we've done very well is, how many of you have salespeople that are 3 years, 5 years away from retirement? What we've done is we've hired those people. We may label them as a sales coordinator, a sales intern, whatever the title may be, but we hire someone to shadow them so they can learn from that person, learn what needs to get done. They're able to at the same time make that life easier, so you can, if you want to, extend the life of the guy, lifetime work life of the guy that's soon to retire by making it easy for him. This guy does all his paperwork, does all his stuff, and in the event of that person leaving, we have the next person that can step in, that can, in a non-threatening way. We have, again, sales coordinators, sales interns. Our internet sales team we use to develop future salespeople. And we have had a number of people that have moved from that team onto our sales staff that had no previous ag experience, but it gives them a couple years to build themselves up, to build the confidence to be able to sell the farm machinery. So what I'm trying to say is, we try to eliminate panic hiring. The last thing you want to do, a lot of us, we say that we're going to wait for the right candidate, but it seems like sometimes we take the guy that's probably the best of the worst. If you can continually build up through onboarding, build up a strong staff of people, if you're willing to make the investment and get them on board, you will be able to do it so much easier going forward as far as the onboarding. So I'll give you a quick example of our AYF onboarding. So we do 4 weeks, and this would be very similar with another new hire. But it's, again, like Kyle said, it's history of the companies. We ask our account managers to go out, sell RDO. Sometimes you hire a person, you throw them the sales book, and you say, good luck, let us know what you sell. In today's market, everyone will admit that we're all selling ourselves. We're selling the company. The iron is just the after effect. It's just the commodity. So how do we expect our account managers to go out and sell RDO unless they truly know it, breathe it, and understand it. And that's what I like, that one slide you had on your presentation about your guys' core values and what you have them look for. Because, you know, what one of our managers do weekly reports with our AYF onboarding people, and one of the things we've asked of them is to ask that person each week, what did you see that separates RDO Equipment Company from the other dealers that we are competing against? And if the more that we teach them to recognize the value that we bring to the table, the less that they'll become price people down the road. So then we go to week 5 through 8. Week 5 through 8 basically consists of a sales manager shadowing along with the AYF student or the new hire. A lot of these things are exactly what Kyle went over. Again, part of it is we have to teach them because we have to teach them about our company and being as diverse and having the different divisions. The more that they can be cross-trained and the more they can learn about the other aspects of our company, the more they can sell the whole story. So we do take quite detailed process with our new hires and make sure that we follow them very closely, that we give them the ability to succeed. But now the big question, what is the ideal solution, the ideal time for onboarding a new person? In our breakout session yesterday, one of the gentlemen mentioned that it's typically 2 years till you figure out if that guy's gonna make it or not. How many would agree with that? How many give more than a 1-year guarantee when you hire somebody? The problem we have is if we move them too quickly, then the customers think, they get attached, then they're gone, and all the customers think about is that, boy, that RDO, all they're doing is churning through salesperson. I don't know who's gonna call on me next. But if we ride them too long, they get more attached to the customer, and it gets harder to make that decision to cut the cord. So I guess what I've tried to say, I'm not the best presenter in the world, but through our bench strength strategy, the more that you can bring people on board, and not particularly for that role. If I had one recommendation, if I was replacing a salesman, the person I hired would not introduce himself as, I'm replacing Tom. I'm a sales trainee for RDO Equipment Company. I sure hope it works out for me. You have to not start that bond, not start that relationship until you know that person's gonna make it. And that's where it's been successful to bring people from other aspects of our sales department to put them into a role, because we can make that right decision before it becomes a tattoo on the arm of, I've had 6 salesmen in the last 5 years calling on me. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that is, we look at onboarding more so as, obviously we have systems in place to do all the nuts and bolts training of our software, of our programs, of our everything, but you're hiring people, you're hiring people that are gonna represent you, and you're hiring people in an industry where there's such a deep attachment to that person you hire. You better make it right, because if not, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Any questions for either Kyle or Mark? We got one kind of in the middle.
Kyle, where you pay out those commissions annually, how do you kind of take a new hire and get them acquainted with the process of here's what's coming down, here's how you can track, here's how you can know, just so they don't wonder for year end? Can you kind of talk how that works for you?
Sure. So when we bring on a new hire, let's say they came in 6 months into our fiscal year, we tell them basically what we want them to do in a year's time, but we have that prorated out so that they know what's going on and what they can expect to have at the end of the year. Like what Mark just said is, we also give some, I can't think of the right word I want to use, but forgiveness, I guess you could say. So that first 2 years, they have a benchmark of what we want them to get to. And if they don't reach that, we know that, they're still learning their area. They're trying to get that customer base set up and go from there. And that we forgive any debts that they might have to us. And then going into that 3rd year is where we start expecting them that as they are growing, that they'll reach their goal for their commissions and get that paid out. If they do come into the end of that 3rd year and they're not meeting that, then we will have that serious talk with them saying, hey, maybe you're not the right person, or maybe there was other circumstances where they didn't quite meet. And so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, really push it. We'll put them on a probation period and go forward from there. But for any new guy that's coming in, we do know that, especially if they come in partway through the year, that we're pretty much, our draw kind of looks like a salary to them at the point, so that they know that, okay, I am guaranteed to get this type of money. I'm safe for the first 6 months. Then my year is going to start, and I really need to start focusing on growing my business and growing my customers so I can have that commission structure come in.
We've got one up here.
So when you were talking about keeping the customer away from the client for a time being, how do you make that transition when someone's taking over a book of business,
So one thing that and again, I could put a map up with little stars of all the places that we failed. We've done it wrong numerous times, so we've learned from our mistakes. But the one thing we've tried is to hire a person and tell them, we don't want them to sell anything for the next 6 months. We don't want you to even try to sell anything. So in that case, if there is a pre-existing customer list that he's taking over, he's just going out and we're introducing him to the customer and he's getting to know the customer. If they ask to buy something, he tells them, I'm not ready to sell you anything. I just started with the company. I need to figure out if this is the right fit. And to just slow the process down, because that first mistake that they make quoting a sale, that first thing they do wrong can make or break a salesperson that we probably, that probably had a hell of a future. So we just try to slow the process down, and we learned from many previous mistakes.
Go ahead, Don.
Have you had similar success bringing on that new young college student and going through this process, or maybe taking a person that's in your organization now, maybe a service technician, maybe a service manager, maybe a CSR, maybe a parts person? Have you had, what has been, I'll address both of you, what has been your experience as it relates to this very important position?
So, in my opinion, you kind of have to walk a fine line, especially when you're taking a salesperson and you're moving them up to like a or sales manager or doing anything like that, because they might have the mentality of being a great salesperson and you think they're going to really promote up to the next position really great. You have to really take a look at that person and look at their past experiences within the organization to see if, okay, maybe let them shadow a sales manager for a little bit of time to see how they would do. Give them some examples of, if you have a deal on the table, how would you do something like this, or how would you confront this, and see what their responses are. There's just a lot of unknown sometimes when you try to take somebody and think that they're great at this one position, we have an opening here, let's move them up. There's just some things that I know we talked about it here in the last day and a half, about sometimes, someone's not necessarily meant to take that management position and they're just better off being a salesperson or something to that effect. So it just really needs to be on a one-on-one basis to see what that person's going to do.
My question was not elevating to
Okay.
bringing them in as a salesperson, period.
Okay. So what we've found is, especially with the millennials, and nothing against any millennial in the room, but a lot of them aren't as content they're not starting their first job and thinking, geez, I hope I retire like dad did doing this. So by starting them in smaller roles, different positions, and letting them work their way up, and it may be in a rapid period of time, that they get more buy-in, they get more excitement. They're the ones that get a little more into, I'm gonna shadow this superstar salesman or this salesperson, and I'm gonna learn from him. So we've had luck with that. But we primarily, I think it was one of the questions, I don't know if it was yesterday in the big session or small session, do you hire former farmers? Or we don't have much luck with that. We're typically, we hire more on personality. Not saying we won't hire a farmer, but we're hiring on the guy that's got the emotional intelligence, that can understand. That's why I said those simple questions I asked during an interview process determines whether I even want to go one step further with them. They got to either have it up here or they don't. But we haven't had much trouble. I mean, because if we do have somebody internally that wants to apply, regardless, they get the formal interview process. They go through the whole process, so you don't get hard feelings. They feel like they were considered. They get a sit-down interview. They get a panel interview. No matter what, and that eliminates the, hey, you hired this guy and didn't give me a chance mentality. I don't know if that answers your question, but that.
I have a slight follow-up question, I think, to Don's question. So say you hired that person who maybe they were a parts counter person. What sort of, if any, onboarding specifically to sales do you guys do with an internal person that came from a different department?
So we're starting to focus more on soft skills. So we're doing 2 regional events each year on sales training, and we're trying to set up different training programs, because what I mentioned earlier, the ability to close is something that during the good times we didn't need. Anybody could sell equipment. Today, a lot of times we only get one shot at it. And we may have so many of those people that none of us raised our hand about that we wouldn't hire back today. They're a good old boy, but they couldn't close. They couldn't leave this industry today and survive anywhere else in the sales field because they can't close on anything other than relationship. And the relationship closing days are gone. I mean, they'll give you the second look. They'll give you maybe a little bit more money, but they're gone. So we train them. The biggest thing we train on is closing. And then the fortunate part, with all of us, with everybody as big as they're getting, they at least know the systems, because the hardest part, you hire a guy off the street, is learning the systems and learning all the other stuff. But so don't forget the closing.
Anything you guys do, Kyle?
Yeah, so we do a personality test within Stouts as well. And so if we had a parts person coming into a sales position, we pretty much act like it's a new employee. We have them take the personality test to see how they compare. You know, if the numbers come out and everything looks good, we'll discuss it with managers that are in the sales department and even the parts department, because we want to see what that person was like as a parts person. And then from there, if we do decide to bring them on, we put them through the exact same onboarding training as if we brought someone new from outside of the company coming in. And we just feel that, yeah, they might know how to do certain things from the parts side, but sales is a little bit different. We need to look at things different, so we want to teach them just like we would any other salesperson.
And one thing I forgot about the personality profile test, so that's vitally important when you make the plan for onboarding. For those of you that haven't used a profile test before, it gives you step-by-step things that this person is strong at and this person needs training on or needs help with. So make sure that use a personality profile test and use the plan that it gives you to bring that person up to speed.
This question may be a little more broader than just sales, but because of a question that came up this morning at a roundtable, and I've got 2 of the leaders up here want to pose it. Been exposed through when I went and did Dealership of the Year visits with each of you about your homegrown leadership development program. And a question came up today of who's doing it best and how they're going about it. And I was, for the benefit of our dealers who had asked that question in the roundtable, could each of you just speak a little bit about the structures you have in place for leadership development and how that works into retention and all the other things? Sure.
So we have a program that we started quite a few years ago called Aspiring Leadership that we do. It's a 2-year program that you have to apply for. Doesn't matter if you're the HR director down to a yard person. If you want to take this class, you can apply for it. So they meet every 6 months. It's taught by our CEO, and it's a group of about 25 employees. And we do allow them to travel to different stores so that they can see different parts of our company. We are ranged from California to Arizona up into Idaho. And with that, each time they meet, they have 1 to 2 books that they have to read in preparation for the class. And they go through that book. So the first book that we make them read is how to make friends and influence people. And we talk about the importance of how to do that in your own personal life, but how it relates to our company. And as they go on throughout the class, the diagram I showed, the circle of success, we basically, our training matches on each one of those things. We talk about people, we talk about processes, we talk about growth and profit, and we talk about all those different things of why it's important. And through that process, as they go through these classes, and it's taught by our CEO, he's taking notes and he's looking at people. He's talking to our HR department. He's talking to our other sales managers, our other managers throughout the company about specific individuals that he sees are really taking it on and taking it to heart. They're learning and they're growing, so that as we grow organically and we have positions open up for managerial positions, we can look internally and promote from there. But the one thing that they have to do is we're looking for employees that have passed that class, and those are the ones that we're looking at first to promote. So if they're in the process of taking that class and a thing comes up, they still could get promoted, but it's a lot harder than if they had passed the class and go from there. So we feel it's a thing of more personal development, but also it helps develop the business as a whole.
So we have a program we call Management Institute, and I think we're on our fourth class. And it's a 3-year program. This year they're going to try something new and make it 2.5 years. But what we go through the company and we pick our future leaders. So each division gets to pick somebody that they see as a future leader. And the class is taught by somebody from our training department who actually was a college professor. So it's a very thorough, very book assignments. Obviously they get together quarterly. In different parts of the region. They visit the stores that are in that region. They learn about the region. It's kind of unique because it's all of the OFIT entities. So this year we have a construction division, we have food processing, farming, and the equipment side, and all those people are brought in, and we have somebody from each of those divisions being represented in this program. So they're able to learn the whole story and be able to share it and help them on their career path to becoming a leader. So that's worked very well for us.
Another question for Mark. We've had, I guess most of us would probably agree it's really tough to teach passion. We can lead, or we can drive, or we can school, but something you brought up on your onboarding, how do you score, or do you truly believe that you can teach closing, or is that something that's more innate that you can just develop? I failed at this miserably several times myself.
So we make our, even today, we have RSMs. Our regional sales managers are expected to be only in the store 1 day a week. They're actually paid commission on what their people that report to them sell. So their whole job is to go out, travel with that account manager and make him a better salesperson. So their bonus plan is commission on what is sold, and they're penalized if it's not delivered in a timely fashion, and all the same things as we do with the salesman. So hopefully we can do it by, watching them firsthand through the training. We also, we have our own self-made /CRM, but our goal is down the road as Deere rolls out with Microsoft Dynamics that we're going to end up with a better CRM to be able to track their closing ratio. The industry that my brother and I came from, this was 25 years ago, I had 18 salesmen working for me, and I could tell you the closing ratio of every one of those salespeople because I knew every deal they were on. And we're selling $500,000 pieces of equipment, and we don't know if we got a guy that can close a screen door or not. So that's the problem.
Well then, thank you guys. Let's give them another round of applause.